And I want to recognize some local Republican leaders. Lena Moran, Executive Director of the Republican Party of Sarasota County. Julie Peters, Treasurer of the Republican Party of Sarasota. Roy Wells, Chair of the Village Walk Republican Club. And Kevin Wright, President of the Manatee Sarasota Republican Assembly. And I want to thank Kevin. He's been not only taking pictures of the club and posting it on Facebook and sharing it with us, which I really appreciate, because it's a lot of work to get a meeting going. It's kind of nice to have volunteers to help out. He's videotaping this meeting today. And we also have the member of the media, WSLR, videotaping today. She's just waiting there, so welcome them as well. I want to recognize some local elected officials. Mike Moran, Sarasota County Commissioner. Britt Reiner, Hospital Board. And Karen Rushing, Clerk of the Circuit Court. The role of our club is really to inform. We do some volunteer work, but our role is to give the information to you. I mean, we really want you to go to a primary and to a general election saying, oh, I heard about this candidate and this issue from the Women's Republican Club. So I'm giving opportunities to certain candidates who are here. They're not going to be part of the panel, but I want to give them 2 minutes to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Lisa Chitero. She's running for state attorney. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Lisa Chitero. I'm running for state attorney. I was hoping Karen was going to get called first. We had 2 minutes instead of a minute. Karen was writing, and so my notes are kind of scratched up. The issues I'm running on are objectivity, accountability, and transparency. And I feel like that needs to be brought back to the office, and the standards need to be raised in regards to those issues. And I graduated law school in 2000. I left the current state attorney's office a couple of years ago, and the reason I was talking so much too, I was talking about animal issues. I used to prosecute animal abuse and elderly issues. I invite you to look at my website and see the speech I gave last Tuesday. Thank you.
Sorry to make that awkward. I moved the podium back because I know people over here want to see, and so I know it's kind of awkward over here. The next person, Paul Fern, candidate for Sarasota County Sheriff. I did everything in alphabetical order, so.
Hello, my name is Paul Fern. Thanks for Travis here this afternoon. I'm running for sheriff in Sarasota County. I'm going to say this right from the get-go. I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a politician. I'm a cop. So this is all this is new. I'm Paul Fern. I have over 2 decades of law enforcement experience, both on the local level, state level, federal level, international level. I spent about 15 years in the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office, 9.5 years on the federal stage. Involved with the United States Air Marshal Service. I was on the Viper team, which did international protection stuff. I always said that I would finish my career where I started it. It's right back here in Sarasota. Sarasota's been I've been through 3 administrations in this agency, and it was my home. They first gave me a job here, and I loved it. It's a family type atmosphere for me, and I want to bring that back to it. I also run add services back that were taken away from South Carolina. Again, like Lisa said, if you have any questions or you can get on my website and look at that.
I'm timing them, they're really doing really well. All right. Kurt Hoffman, also running for Sarasota County Sheriff.
Happy birthday, by the way. How's everybody doing? Good. I'm Colonel Kurt Hoffman. I'm currently the Chief Deputy and General Counsel at the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office. I've been to this luncheon many times and shared some of my thoughts with you, and certainly I'm usually the last one to leave here, so I'll stay and talk to anybody that wants to talk about any issues. But what I want you to kind of ask yourself is, in terms of what's going on in Sarasota County with our crime rate, with the way that we do policing in this community, I've been very fortunate to work under Sheriff Knight's leadership for, will be 12 years by the time he leaves office. As everyone knows, he's not seeking re-election and has endorsed me. We've seen record gains in reduction in crime in Sarasota County. We've cut Part 1 crimes, which are the violent crimes that affect all of you, significantly by 52% in the time that Sheriff Knight's policing strategies have been put in place. So I'm extremely proud of that. Another very important thing that I don't talk about enough is, and it's been in the media with the State of the Union address from the President, we've deported 635 illegal aliens out of our jail and back to their home countries. They're not going to be praying on citizens. Not praying citizens here in Sarasota County. So we're going to continue a lot of those same programs. And third, I want to leave you with, I was talking to Janet and some other folks earlier about the programs that we're running in our jail. They're state-of-the-art programs to deal with mental health, to deal with addiction, to deal with the problems that our veterans face, and to help them be successful on the outside. I'm very proud of our policing strategy and very proud of the programs that we have in the jail. We're doing it on both ends, and we'll continue to do that when I'm elected. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Next month, we're going to focus on constitutional officers and have everyone speak, but we'll have a mini forum, and the mini forum is going to be between the two sheriff candidates, so that's going to be next month's program. Okay, Mike Moran, Sarasota County Commission. He just filed this past Monday, so he's running for re-election.
Thank you, Lourdes. I just want to use my time to just tell a quick story about my amazing daughter, Lena, who, thank you for introducing her. She's the executive director now for the party here in Sarasota, involved at the state level too, but how time flies. My wife, Lori, and I moved here when Lena was 4 years old. And we came here not knowing a single person, literally not a single soul. And my daughter was 4 and my son was 2 at the time. And we come here and we just didn't have any friends or family, so we just got really entrenched in the Republican Party and just dedicated, I'm not exaggerating, thousands and thousands of hours. I've been appointed by the governors for the Southwest Florida Water Management District. I was on the Planning Commission. I was on Sarasota Bay Estuary Program, Charlotte Harbor Estuary Program, literally thousands and thousands of hours. And now, when I go into events, and I introduce myself and I say, hi, I'm Mike Moran, they go, oh, you're Lena's dad. I couldn't be more proud, and boy, I'll tell you what, any community that doesn't pay attention to attracting and retaining their youthful people, boy, better watch out. So I'll do everything in my power to make sure we attract and retain these young adults here. So thank you all.
I'm impressed. So far, they're way below their required time. These are politicians. All right, next person, Britt Reiner. She's running for a hospital board. She also just recently filed this past Monday, I believe, right?
We live in the best country in the world. We live in the best state in the country, and we live in the best county in the state. And it is for that reason that I find it so fitting that Sarasota Memorial Hospital, our county hospital, is the best in the county. It is the best in the state. It is one of the best in the country, and dare I say, one of the best in the world. And that's why I am here today. My name is Britt Reiner. I currently serve on the Sarasota County Public Hospital Board at large seat 3, and I am asking for your support to keep doing that with this year's election. This hospital is a gem to our community. Not only is it a center of excellence for care, quality, and innovation, it is the #1 employer in Sarasota County. Almost 7,000 people receive a paycheck for their families there. It is the #1 economic driver for our town, the reason people choose to relocate here. And you can be sure that in the next year and a half, we're going to open up another amazing hospital in Venice. We're going to complete a comprehensive care institute so you don't have to leave Sarasota for you or your loved ones to receive cancer treatment. And we are going to press the refresh and the reset button on how mental health is treated in our community. I want to be the person to continue providing the financial oversight, the management oversight, and the strategic oversight for those projects. This is my hometown. I was born and raised in Sarasota. I graduated from our public schools, and I did go away to Duke University thanks to a scholarship from Bill and Melinda Gates. Would they not be surprised if I was a Republican? I did my graduate work at Stanford University, and my husband and I lived in a lot of fabulous places, but we knew if we were ever going to call a place home, it was back to Sarasota. So we moved here 6 years ago. We've had 2 babies in that time. We're going to have a third next week. And I can't think of a better hospital to do it in. You all can be confident that your care, I care about. We are so excited to have this hospital go on to even greater heights. So, as we work to keep America great, let's work to keep Sarasota Memorial great, and I want to make it even better. Thank you.
Karen Rose for Sarasota County School Board. Karen. So it is true that Sarasota Memorial Hospital is the biggest employer, and the next two are the municipality of Sarasota and Sarasota County government.
Thank you, Lourdes, and happy birthday. And I get to take a little pinch of credit for Lena Moran, the Executive Director of the Sarasota County Republican Party, because I was her middle school principal. Let's give Lena a round of applause for doing such a great job for all of us. Karen Rose, running for Sarasota County School Board. It's been my calling to serve our children for the last 30 years, our families, and you in this community. I am uniquely qualified as a conservative to make sure that your tax dollars are being spent on the needs of our children and that they are for the betterment of this community. As of late, we've had a lot of media sharing that we've had some problems on the school board, the superintendent, the assistant superintendent. There's been close to $1 million payout settlement. That needs to stop. The focus needs to go back to our children. Not only do we need to have our children graduate college ready, we want them career ready, and that's one of my specialties. Started a career program in every one of our middle schools. We need trades locally, and we need children to grow up and know that they can earn a living, and it's not all about college debt. And lastly, less government. We do not need our school board making decisions for our families and our children. That is for you, the family, the parents, and I will make sure that I restore those rights alongside Bridget Ziegler and Eric Robinson, who have both endorsed me, as well as our State Senator Joe Reuters. Karen Rose and Sydney is here, and I need your support, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, next person is a candidate running for re-election, Clerk of the Court, Karen Rushing.
Thank you, Lourdes. Happy birthday. You're going to get a lot of happy birthdays. Thank you all for coming today, and I will have to be brief because Lourdes has a time clock going here. There's a few things I want you to remember about the office. First of all, I'm Karen Rushing, and I'm the Clerk and County Comptroller and have been serving this community for many years, and I want to thank all of you in this room who've been so supportive throughout those years. Second, it's important for you to understand it's one of those sort of quiet offices that you really don't know exists until you need it. And I want you to realize how important it is to your everyday lives, or to your children, or to your mother, to your father, everybody in your family. And then the last thing I want you to remember is my name is Karen Rushing, and I'm running for re-election. I do want to tell you a little bit about the office. We interface with the Sheriff's Department on an everyday basis. All of their arrests come to the office. We help and assist with protecting the community from firearms getting into the hands of people who shouldn't have them, and we process those matters with law enforcement. We interface with the tax collector and the property appraiser when we record all of your mortgages, deeds, and liens. We just launched a fraud awareness program for all of you. If you sign up, you will get emails about the land records, and you can make sure that no one is transferring your property without your awareness. Also, the thing that I really want people to realize is that the clerk of the circuit court, which usually is truncated to just that, is really the county comptroller as well. And under those responsibilities, I invest your tax dollars. The portfolio is around $1 billion, and I am the internal auditor of county government and the inspector general for fraud, waste, and abuse, and that also includes guardianships in this community and around our Tampa Bay area. Thank you again for your support, and I appreciate the opportunity to address you today.
And last, I have Jerry Wells, who's running for the City of Sarasota Council.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jerry Wells. I'm your candidate for District 2, Sarasota City Commission. Before I get going today, I have to tell you, the very first time I spoke in front of a group was here last month, and boy, was I nervous. After the speech, Julie came up to me and gave me very nice motherly advice. She said, Jerry, relax, be yourself, and people will like you. And I don't know if Jack's here today, but Jack came up to me and he said, Jerry, 9 a.m., my office, boot camp, be there. And I said, yes, sir. So that's how this started. So the first question I'm always asked is, Jerry, why are you doing this? And the truth is, I love Sarasota. I don't want to see Sarasota turn into San Francisco. The next question I'm always asked is, Jerry, how are you going to do it? If you get up there, you're one of 5. I said, through negotiation, we can bridge that gap. One of the things we need to start immediately is we need to rip out the wasteful spending that's going on in our local government. We'll put an end to it. Another issue we have to tackle is traffic. There's been no concern for traffic. We live here. I move back and forth twice a day, taking my child to and from school over that bridge, and it is impossible. Just impossible. It needs to be addressed. And the last thing I want to bring to your attention, as many of you know, my father was a police officer. I am your law and order candidate. Our police and sheriff department need to be supported. We need to give them the resources and the equipment to keep us safe. Lastly, I want to say, over the next 10 months, I want to earn your vote. God bless America, and God bless Donald J. Trump.
Thank you. Okay, what we're going to handle today, in a few minutes, we'll ask the candidates to come up for District 72, and what they're going to do is have an opening statement, answer a few questions, and then we'll have a closing statement. I have on every table, index cards. I did receive about 24 questions to ask by email. But if you have a question and you want, we'll try to squeeze as many questions as we can in. Just fill out those cards, and when one of our board members will walk around and collect them. But I've got quite a few already. But before I bring them up, we just have a few club announcements. Next month, well, first of all, before I go into next month's program, one of the things that's good about the Republican Women's Club's website is we have a dedicated Election 2020 page. And on that, we have the candidates who have filed. Now, it's not up to date because I found out some of them filed this past Monday, and I found out about it today. So we'll have some of them, but they will have them up to date by the end of this weekend. And it'll also have links to their website. So if you're interested in a candidate and you didn't have enough information today, you want to access their website, go to the Republican Women's Club website, Election 2020. You can look up the candidates, the Republican candidates that are running, and then just click onto their website. Then for new candidates, please send me your link to your website so I can make sure that's on there as well. So that gives you, and the best thing about that too is if, like, we're District 72, some people came to me and says, where's District 72? It runs by University Parkway, goes south to Osprey, but it doesn't include Longboat Key. And it's kind of, if you want to look to see if that's your district, on our website, we have links to the maps. So that's something good for you. Oh, and you also put maps in the back. Donna Barker put maps in the back. We have a table there with literature, so if you didn't get literature, grab some information from the back table as well. So thank you for bringing those maps. Oh, okay. All right, so that's the election 2020 page. Just a reminder of everybody, we had Ron Turner here in January to remind us that next month, March, on March 18th, let's see, March 17th, that's St. Patrick's Day, we're having the presidential primary, and there are 4 Republicans running for president. So we want to be able to make your voices heard. So keep in mind, the mail-in ballots is coming out soon. I think they already shipped those to the military, and those are going to be coming out if you signed up for mail-in ballots. But keep an eye out for that in the next month. That's March 17th. So March 6th, which is our next luncheon, is going to focus on constitutional officers. And what do I mean by that? For those especially who are new from out of town, of the 67 counties that make up Florida, 20 has its own constitution, their own little charter. And it dictates the structure of our government. And it has everything. There's 5 constitutional officers, like clerk of the court, Sarasota sheriff, property appraiser, I'm missing, tax collector, and supervisor of elections. And Ron Turner says he'll show up, and they'll be given a few minutes to introduce themselves and answer a couple of questions. And then I'm going to do a mini forum for the Sarasota sheriff, because most of the constitutional officers do not have a Republican opponent. But that's the focus of next month's meeting. I'm also inviting county commissioners who filed to talk that month, and the charter review board members, because we not only have our own charter, our own constitution, we have the only elected board that reviews the charter. Donna is on that board. So it's something that we really need to learn more about. I'll explain a little bit more about the charter next month, have the constitutional officers speak for a few minutes, answer a couple of questions, and then do the mini forum. So next month, constitutional officers and our charter. In April, we have the Florida Studios Theater is going to come and explain the suffragette project. They're running throughout Sarasota County, and they're going to have people here acting out 4 great speeches by women during the suffragette movement. And many of you who've been regular members know that I always give a little trivia. And I've been doing that since September. And I like to have these geeky questions asked and see if you can answer these questions. Then in April, we're going to have everybody answer. I'm going to have the trivia questions out. You'll be given the opportunity to answer it, and I'm sure you're all going to get the right answers. And we'll put it all in a basket and give out a draw for a prize. So this month, I want to also talk a little bit about the suffragette movement, because many times you hear, as if the Republicans are anti-women. I hear that a lot. And it just frustrates me, because it was the Republicans that pushed for the women's right to vote. A little bit of information, this is not the question yet. The Wyoming was the state that pioneered the suffrage movement, and they sent 2 women, Teresa Jenkins and Cora Carlton, to the 1892 Republican Convention as delegates. This was the first time women were allowed to be delegates at the Republican National Convention. Senator A.A. Sargent, a Republican from California, introduced the 19th Amendment in 1878. Sargent's amendment was defeated 4 times by a Democrat-controlled Senate, and it was when the Republican Party regained control of Congress in 1919, the Equal Suffrage Amendment finally passed the House that May, and in the Senate in June. When the amendment was submitted to the states, 26 out of 36 states ratified the amendment, and they all had Republican legislators. Of the 9 states who voted against ratification, 8 were Democratic. 12 states, all Republican, had given the full suffrage to women before the federal government was even ratified, before the federal amendment was even ratified in 1920. And in August 18, 1920, Tennessee became the 36th and final state needed to ratify the amendment. And that was ratified in 1920. So I just want to be sure that you have a little information about the 19th Amendment and make clear that it was Republicans who pushed it forward many years ago. So, I have a question for you, like I always do every month. Now, as we said, 36 states ratified the amendment. Florida was not one of them in 1920. It wasn't. So, my question to you is, when do you believe Florida voted to ratify the 19th Amendment, even though it was just symbolic at that time? Was it A, 1921, a year after the government ratified it, 1938, or 1969? So how many of you believe it was in 1921? Some. 1938? A few more. 1969? Oh, a few more, good. It was 1969. It was 1969. You know, in 1920, when the government put forth the 19th Amendment, Florida didn't even want to vote on the measure. So it wasn't until 1969 that they finally decided to ratify the 19th Amendment. So remember that for next month when we do the question. Now some special announcements. First, Women for Trump is having their, they have a rally at the corner of Bee Ridge and Cattleman the third Saturday of every month. So I just want to let you know that. And there's also a Trump sign waving today, and every Friday, at the US 41 and Laurel Road in Nokomis. It starts at 3 p.m. I want to point out two women who work really hard on these things. Julie Brady and Marilyn Kirkwood are amazing on how much work they put in to do these rallies and to do these events. So thank you very much. I also want to bring up our executive director of the party, Lena Moran. She wants to make a few announcements about they're looking for volunteers, and so I want to give her a few minutes.
Hi, my name is Lena. I work with the Republican Party of Sarasota and also for the Trump Victory Team. We are looking for volunteers in order to keep Florida red. Our Cattleman office is between Bee Ridge and Fruitville. So we need help in the office, voter registration, door knocking. So if you go to our website, sarasotagop.com, you can register as a volunteer, pick the days that you're available, what you prefer to volunteer with. Our calendar is up to date, everything. You can pick a shift that you'd like. So just check out our website and help us keep Florida red. Thank you.
Excuse me, where are you located again?
On Cattleman between Bee Ridge and Fruitville, 1747 Cattleman Road.
Thank you, Lena. As I mentioned, the Women's Club likes to keep you informed and have these meetings so you have as much information as possible, but we do some volunteer work. One of the things that we, in meeting hands-on, one of the things we're going to do is the party is going to have a booth at the Sarasota Fair starting March 13th to March 22nd, and every club is going to take a day and man the booth. So we're looking for volunteers for the day we picked, which is Sunday, March 22nd. We have sign-up sheets in the back, so if you just want to stand there, meet other Republicans, hand out information, please sign up and we'll contact you and arrange for that as well. And then, of course, if the party needs more during the week, we can, if we're full, we'll just make sure that they get that information as well. So thank you for that. All right, let's start the main programs. If I'm going to ask Donna Barcom, Fiona McFarland, and Jason Miller to come up. As I mentioned, all questions are going to come written. We're not taking any questions from the floor. Okay, we're going to start with opening statements. Each one will have 2 minutes, and I am timing you. All right. Okay, starting with Donna Barcom, we'll start here and go to Fiona.
Hi, my name is Donna Barcom. I'm running for House District 72. Isn't it a great time to be a Republican? Donald Trump winning on almost every indicator. Governor DeSantis at 72% and doing an incredible job right out of the starting gate. And a Republican-controlled legislature. I mean, you can't get any better than that, except to win that house back this time. So we need to work on that. I have deep roots in Sarasota. It's the place I love, the place I call home. I have lived all over the United States. I graduated from UCLA, and then I got my master's, received my master's at Boston University, but I have never lived the 33 years I lived here. I raised 4 sons. Gunnar and Steele Barkham are over here. Some of you got to meet them. Out of the other 2 are out of state. And my husband, Craig Barkham. I raised 4 sons, all of whom have graduated from the Sarasota County Public Schools in this district. I own Professional Physical Therapy Center in this district. My husband owns West Coast Spine Center in this district. In addition to running an office, running my office, and raising my children, I also have been a very committed advocate and community volunteer. Southside PTA President, Junior League of Sarasota Inc. President, elected to the Sarasota Memorial Hospital Board 3 times, twice its chair, and I currently serve on the Sarasota County Charter Review Board, re-elected for the 2nd term, and I was chair once. What I will say is, in closing, Britt Reiner, I was in the same situation as she was when I was on the hospital board, and it's just so refreshing because I don't think there's ever been another pregnant woman on the Sarasota Memorial Hospital board since me. So, so a plug for Britt. Thank you.
Guys, it's election year. You can see from all of our awesome candidates that we got to hear from today that the Republican Party in Sarasota is quite strong, and we will be in great hands in 2020. The 3 of us up here today running for District 72, we've each had a very different path that's brought us to these seats today. My particular path took me to the Naval Academy for college, and then on to the Navy afterwards, where I served at sea on guided missile destroyers. I deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, and then my path took me to the private sector. It took me to get a business degree, an MBA, and then working as a management consultant for a firm called McKinsey. And now my path has taken me and my husband, Matt, who's standing in the back, here to Sarasota, where we've decided to make this our forever home, and we're gonna have a family soon. I'm due just a week behind Britt. I'm a proud Republican, which means I believe in small government, I believe in a strong economy, and high degree of personal freedom. When it comes to Sarasota in particular, I'd really like to see us do a little bit more about protecting our environment and water quality. I want to see us make a strong business environment to keep up with the job growth that we need as our population expands. And then fighting to bring some of those state investment dollars back to this region. Thank you guys all for being here, and for Lourdes for putting this together. This is what democracy is being informed about who your representatives are. So leading up to an election, you can choose who best represents you. So thank you all for taking an active role in your own future and in this country's future, because it sure is a great one.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Jason Miller, and it's great to see a handful of familiar faces. I want to thank everybody for coming and participating in democracy, and participating in our opportunity to really get to know you. I went around the room and I tried to speak with everybody that I could to say hello and to promote myself for District 72. But I especially want to thank one person in the room today who introduced me to conservative politics back in the late 70s, or maybe it was 1980. George H.W. Bush came to Sarasota as he was campaigning for president, and my mom, Mary Ann Miller, actually took me as a youngster there. So I want to thank her. I'm running for District 72. This is also my hometown. I want to echo the things that I'm hearing about the call to service. I grew up in Sarasota. I went to St. Martha's Catholic School. I was an altar boy there. Then I went on to Cardinal Mooney, played soccer and was captain of the soccer team. Moved on to play soccer at USF and returned after law school to become a prosecutor with Kurt and Lisa, two of the people that were up on stage earlier that are also feeling a call to service. For about 10 years, I was in the prosecutor's office in some of the same units that they have described, the gang unit, the white collar unit that's there, and that call to service continues. I then signed up for the military. I'm currently a reservist in the JAG Corps, and returned to then do a stint with the Attorney General's office in Tampa as an appellate attorney. And now as a leader of the legal community here in Sarasota, I work for a law firm, the Nasri Thompson law firm in Lakewood Ranch, Sarasota, and Bradenton. And I'm a leader within their litigation team. So I bring that to the table here. There's a handful of items that I want to talk about today. We'll get an opportunity to answer some questions, specifically with water quality. And if I get some time, I want to express how important that is. Everybody in this room, I'm sure, and we've heard some of them today, has a story of why they came to Sarasota. And it's the beautiful, it usually starts with the beautiful beaches, the beautiful people, and I want to expand on that and keep Florida moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. When I give you the time. So, now again, if you have any questions, please write them down on the card. You know, I think Lorna is going to go around and pick them up if you have any questions. Okay, she's right here, and she can pick up some questions. But we've got quite a few by email, and it's about a dozen, or actually 2 dozen. And I'm really proud to say that this is the first time these 3 have been in a forum in Sarasota County, so really glad that they came. Thank you all for coming. So, each House legislator is limited to just 6 sponsored bills. What proposal will be your number 1? I'll start with Fiona since we started with Donna before. What will be your number 1 proposal?
Six seems like a small number when you have a lot of ideas. I would start with water quality. It's, as Jason said, we all love it here because of the natural God-given beauty that this area has, and water is one of them. So when I talk about water quality, I mean red tide specifically. 2019, the legislature did a great job. They allocated $18 million of funding over 5 years for Moat Marine to investigate the problem and try to understand why red tide, why it comes, why it stays, and what makes it worse. That's a great first step in my mind, but there's more to be done. The three things that I would like to attack, and some of this is underway with Senator Joe Gruters is leading some of this legislation. We got to increase fines for negligent or willful sewage spills. So while I'm proud of Sarasota, in 2019 we had Sarasota County had a $500,000 fine for sewage spills. It was the highest fine levied in the whole state. We got to do better. Secondly, around water quality, I'd go after septic tanks. It's not a sexy thing to campaign on, but we know who our prime offender septic tanks are, right? There's about 18,000 septic tanks, and we know that the prime offenders that drain to the water table, it's perhaps 7,000 to 8,000. If we can go after those, prioritize them, that'll have a huge impact on cleaning up our water. And then lastly, stormwater. It rains a lot here. We have a lot of stormwater. We have stormwater insulation that collects that and drains it, but much of that infrastructure needs a little bit of updating and modernizing to drain some of the nutrients before they hit the water. And so I would attack water quality around those 3 avenues.
I was kind of sneaky. I told them we only have 1 minute to answer. I'm going to give them 2, but I figured I wanted to let them hurry up. All right, so Jason, if you can answer the same question, which will be your number 1 priority if you get elected?
I have to echo the sentiment about really there being more than 1 priority. Water quality touches so many areas of our lives that it's hard to ignore the reality. I mean, think about where we were just about a year ago when there was the horrible red tide that swept in, right? And People didn't know necessarily how to solve it. There was a dispute about where it comes from. There's still a dispute about how to stop the exacerbation. So the governor has taken some extraordinary steps to actually address the problem head on. I would continue with those steps. There are a number of things that water quality talks about: stormwater, surface water, septic tanks. All of that plays a role in the runoff into the Gulf, the blue-green algae that's in the waterways, the fresh waterways, and how that feeds into the Gulf. So I would address that and continue to address that. But it's more than just my vote. And this is one of the things that I want to impress upon everybody. It's more than just what one person can do. When you're in the legislature, as some of the legislators here can attest, it takes more than one person to spearhead something. You have to have some leadership ability and leadership quality that comes from the years of experience within some government programs and within the legal community, which I think I bring to the table. So I would like to bring that to Tallahassee, so that it's not just my vote. I can talk and convince other people to come over and vote in a like-minded way. And in doing that, there would be some other priorities that I hope I get a chance to talk about. I know Colonel Hoffman spoke about mental health and its role in significant criminal justice reform. There's been significant drops in crime rates when we address specific mental health issues. There's some funding that's in there. So 10 seconds. There's a lot that I'd like to talk to you about, and feel free to talk to me afterwards.
I do that so that we can get as many questions answered as possible and not have one person take over the entire question. So please forgive me.
Okay, since everybody started with water quality, I'll start with affordable housing. Right now, the House is not fully funding the Sadowski Trust Fund into affordable housing. I would hope that they choose to do that as well. Already the Senate and Governor DeSantis are pushing for that. That's $347 million that will go into ship and sale. Secondly, I think with education, I fully support the base teacher salary of $47,500. I support the per pupil allocation continuing to increase. There's nothing greater that we can do for our next generation than to give them a solid education. Thank you. Third is, and Karen Rose already identified this, I support the identification of children who are at risk of dropout into the middle school and exposing them to alternate ways of learning, whether it is through the trades or other ways of addressing their particular issues. And fourth, I applaud Governor DeSantis in regards to his addressing core curriculum. By 22-23, we will no longer have to deal with that. We will have financial viability classes. We have a civics class that's going to occur in the senior year of high school. They're going to get rid of the way they teach math, and they're going to implement what's called BEST, which is best standards. And then not less important for me, because our family are big boaters and big scuba divers, and my kids love to spearfish. So the water has been everything their entire life. And I agree with my opponents that water quality, being a Republican and being concerned about the environment, are not mutually exclusive. And so my feeling is we need to keep addressing what they're doing. Okay, and that is money allocating to infrastructure for Okeechobee and for sources of nutrient flow.
Thank you. Starting with Jason. Okay. Do you support E-Verify? That's why businesses must verify if a worker is legally here as an immigrant.
E-Verify is the controversial proponent by Senator Gruters that I do support. I do support the ability for people to identify and have the means of understanding whether their employees, in fact, are illegally here, or perhaps have a criminal record in some other fashion. So I want to look at specifically to the bill, which would be very specific as to the proponents' and the terms of the E-Verify system, but there is a government system, the federal government system has one that's implemented regarding E-Verify for government employees, and it does have the effect of, that the intended effect of keeping government workers legal. So I do support that, generally speaking. Thanks.
I also would support E-Verify. I believe in securing the border and enforcing the law. The challenge is going to be is that it is going to be very difficult for some employers to implement that, especially with small businesses and that kind of thing, unless they really facilitate the process. So we'll have to wait and see and how that goes. But generally speaking, I do support it.
So I just want to take a pause out of the question for a second. So Joe Gruder's mother and Joe Gruder's wife are sitting right here. He's our Sarasota senator, and even though on the House side you can only have 6 bills, it's not limited on the Senate side, and Joe Gruder's has like 48,000 pieces of legislation. And he listens to Sarasota, so I'm counting how many of these questions involve Joe Gruder's bills. E-Verify is one of them. So I support legal immigration. I do not support illegal immigration. Countries have to have borders. It upsets me greatly in these democratic debates that we're talking about open borders and wouldn't the world be great? No, it wouldn't be. A nation has a sovereign right to defend its borders and to make them secure. As it stands right now, the burden of enforcing illegal immigration falls solely to the government and law enforcement. So Kurt Hoffman talked about how the sheriffs deported 650 illegal immigrants. With E-Verify, it would move some of that burden to the private sector, which I generally am okay with. Any way we can cut down on illegal immigration and remove the motivation for folks coming here, which is a paycheck, I'm going to be supportive of. However, I'm also a pro-business Republican. That's a huge burden to levy on businesses. Donna touched on it, and she would know as a business owner, right? If suddenly we tell every business owner that they have a waiting period before they can hire someone, and they might have to get rid of that person once they've already hired and trained them. That's going to be a big burden for a lot of the industries that are big in Sarasota, like construction service, whatever. Yeah, thank you. Construction service and hospitality.
10 seconds.
So I do support it on principle, but we got to be sensitive to how it's going to affect the private sector, and I know Joe's listening to that too.
Okay, starting with Donna, staying on immigration, what is your position? I know a lot of states have been looking at giving undocumented immigrants driver's licenses. What is your position on that?
Well, this is an easy one. Absolutely not. Do I really need to elaborate? Ditto.
That's right. Ditto.
That was great. Okay. Another controversial one is there's a bill in the Senate, I believe, that requires minors, or maybe it's in the House, requires minors to receive parental consent before being eligible to get an abortion. Would you please share your views on that bill and that issue? And starting with Fiona.
So it's passed the Senate. We're back to Joe Gruder's again. It's passed in the Senate, and this is saying that minors, before they can have an abortion, must have notarized parental consent, which is different from existing law, which is stating that parents just simply must be notified. I would vote in support of this legislation.
As I read the bill, I would support it as well. I see it as a parenting issue. We know that children, and there are laws in place already, children can't buy cigarettes, they can't get a driver's license to a bar, they can't buy alcohol. So there's something in the law that's embedded that children generally need the supervision of parents, and parents are charged with raising their children correctly. So the notification requirements, I think, is a good thing, and I think I would support the bill. I would like to see it play out. The affidavit that's mentioned in there seems a little bit iffy, but generally speaking, I'm in support of parental notification.
Are you kidding me? I mean, really? That you're going to allow a child under the age of 18 to make such an incredible decision and not notify the parents? You can't even give a kid an aspirin at the school without getting some kind of permission slip. I can't believe that this is even an issue. And what makes me really angry is they're calling it an abortion bill. Okay? I hope we're going to have that conversation at some point. But this is not an abortion bill. It's parental rights. Okay? If we're going to talk about abortion bills, we'll talk about that too.
Who was the last one who started? Was it you, Fiona?
Fiona.
Oh, I lost track. So Jason's the next question. Okay, we're going to talk about home rule, and that's about preemption. Now, for those who may not know, when we pass local ordinances here, local laws in Sarasota County, sometimes the state comes along and passes a law that preempts or changes. It's like, for instance, we used to have a ban on smoking on the public beaches, and then the state passed a law that you can't banning smoking bans. So the question I have on preemption is, what's your overall opinion on preemption? And then I have a second follow-up to that. Jason?
I think we're back to Joe Gruner's again, right? All right. Yes, cigarettes on the beach was the bill, I believe, right? No butts on the beach, right? Well, home rule, I do believe that people who live here, people who work here, people who pay taxes here are better to rule themselves. So they have generally a better understanding of what they need and how they can run their lives. So home rule as a concept is something that I favor. There are some things that the state, generally speaking, could have overarching authority, but those are statewide issues. Generally statewide issues. Things that are local and things that affect our home are for us to decide.
Well, being the member on the Charter Review Board and being chair of the Charter Review Board, I believe that government closest to the people is the best government. And it's interesting because there's a bill right now that Key West decided that they didn't want to have certain types of sunscreens because they feel it causes coral bleaching. Okay, it's oxybenzone or something. So there is a law going through the Senate right now to ban that bill. I have a problem when the legislature does that, and there seems to be more and more of a tendency to want to do that. I do believe that government closest to the people is the best government.
So we're all good Republicans. We're going to agree on 99.9 of these issues. I think what you're hearing here is that if we're true to the conservative platform, it's that decentralized power is the best way, and that government that is closest to the people knows the people and is best. I agree with that. That will be my guiding philosophy on anything that comes before me. But look at my experience set. This is how I make decisions. When I was in the Navy, you look at intelligence reports, and then you judge the circumstances on the ground, and you make the best decision you have with the information you have. When I was in the private sector, you look at the data. You look at the data to inform your decision, and you balance that with the client capability, and then you move forward given what you know. Same thing is going to come to any home rule versus preemption case that comes before me. Yes, my philosophy will keep me towards decentralization and home rule. However, there's always going to be some nuance and some it depends out there that I think I have to give credence to that. Also because there's a county commissioner in the room.
That's great. Okay, let's start with Donna. Well, then talk about that, because there are some that may make sense. But one that keeps coming up is vacation rentals. This is a situation where local government says, daily rentals, Airbnbs do not belong in residential areas, so they have a ban. But every once in a while, we keep hearing the state legislators trying to ban the bans on vacation rentals in residential areas. So what is your opinion on vacation rentals? And if you think that the state should preempt, local government on those rules?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say that since there's such a huge variation of vacation rental needs throughout the whole state of Florida, that I don't believe that at the legislative level that you should or could do that. I think that local governments, like the county commission and or even the city of Sarasota, if they choose to do so, that's one thing. But you can't compare, I'm thinking of like Miami to an area around Lake Okeechobee. So I just think that would be wrong for the state to do that.
I'll return to core principles here. I believe in property rights. Yes, I have compassion for those of us who live on Siesta Key and have no place to park and are seeing these houses go up that have 7 bedrooms and are just purely for Airbnb. You know, I have compassion with that and I can understand that, but it's about property rights for me. And I would suspect there's several people in this room that own a second home that they perhaps rent out from time to time. You should be able to earn an income from that property. So while I do have compassion for these beach communities that are really getting hit hard with short-term rentals, I support property rights.
Vacation rental ban, I think, is the question generally. Should Tallahassee ban statewide what individual counties that skirt the coast want to do? That changes depending on the people that are there. This is a classic home rule question, right? And is it fair for Tallahassee to then just blanket over everyone and say, no, you can't do that? I think that's a prohibition against property rights. Because that's a particular question that varies, literally from neighborhood to neighborhood, and almost from street to street. Right, so that democracy takes place close to home. If Siesta Key wants to change, then by all means, Siesta Key can change it, or sections therein can change it, and we invite you to do that. That's part of democracy. But to just go to Tallahassee and kind of blanket one person's rule or one group's rule over the entire state, there's varying grades of that. I mean, Anna Maria is different than Longboat Key, is different than Siesta, is different than Casey Key. Let alone if you go in the state. So why are we banning vacation rentals in, necessarily in Polk County or something like that? Not that anything's wrong with Polk County, don't get me wrong, but it's just not necessarily the same as Siesta Key. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. I think it's to the local government to make the decisions for themselves.
Okay, I have a question. What is your opinion on red flag laws, starting with, I think we're at Fiona?
I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. In the Navy, in the Navy, I swore to defend the Constitution. I care very deeply about it. That includes the Second Amendment. I believe all people have an inalienable right to bear arms. That being said, I also support and trust our public safety and law enforcement officials. And if Sheriff Knight and Kurt Hoffman have a credible threat and a reason to believe that someone is unsafe to carry firearms, I support them in removing those firearms. And that's where I stand on it.
I also support the Second Amendment. I haven't seen a red flag law that seems to work appropriately. It doesn't seem to work without violating the Second Amendment or due process therein. So if I were to see one that could somehow differentiate very clearly those particulars, I would consider it, but I haven't seen one yet. I do see there's a bill that passed the Senate recently that discusses notification and tries to what they call close the loophole of the gun show sales, which I can't agree with their definition of firearms. I can't agree with it, again, and this affidavit thing that seems consistent with people having to report things by affidavit, which seems a little bit odd. If you want to go buy a gun from a private sale or sell one to my cousin, I have to then stop and go to the bank and get the affidavit signed and notarized. So the red flag laws that violate the Second Amendment, I clearly would be against.
Well, I feel the same way as my opponents. I have a position statement in the back on Senate Bill 7028, which is what they're talking about in regards to trying to close the loopholes at gun shows, but it also doesn't allow for family members or whatever to transfer firearms. Very against it, go into detail. I am a Second Amendment, I am pro Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is what allows all the other amendments to occur.
Is Jason next? Okay, I believe. All right, many of you have talked about septic tanks, and the question is, could you each elaborate on what your position on septic tanks and what you want to do with septic tanks?
Well, there's been a discussion about how to motivate people that own septic tanks that are notorious. They're generally older, and they spill into the waterways upon, the least sexy topic that I think we're going to talk about today. And they essentially pollute the inland waterways that goes out into the bay and eventually into the Gulf, and promotes pollution and red tide and those things. There's thousands upon thousands of older homes that contain septic tanks that are unregulated. So the approach that's been taken in the past is to increase fines. So if someone has to pay a fee, has to come and change their septic tank, there's been an approach that you get some kind of tax credit if you buy a house, and on the transition of the house purchase, you end up improving it by the septic tank, or by changing out the septic tank. These are all smart improvements, but they don't seem to be working. I do believe this is kind of a local home rule issue, because the septic tank issue is generally contained or spread about the coast. So it's generally a specific issue for the county government or they're beyond. But I would try to implement additional tax benefits for people who take it upon themselves to change the septic system within their house. That way, it allows the individual to basically be in charge of their own destiny, which I think is one of the more important things with democracy. If they can get a benefit that's a benefit to everybody, and it can be promoted to do that by the government, where the person makes that decision and then betters everybody because of it, is the way I would go with septic tanks.
Septic tanks are very interesting because they're boring, and and that's the problem. And our chief science officer, Dr. Frazier, came and spoke this last week to a group from Argus. It was very interesting. We have millions of septic tanks. So to realistically think that we're going to change all those septic tanks and make people who own septic tanks change at their expense is probably not a practical thing. And I could say, as a politician, I'm going to get all the septic tanks gone, but that's not the way I only say what I really think I'm going to do. So what I would say is that the problems are that there are a lot of septic tanks that are working fine, and therefore it's the leaky septic tanks. So how do you find out those? And people who are close to the coast that have septic tanks, that's a problem also. So unless they develop some sort of monitoring, and there's a way to really monitor leakage, that would be the way I'd approach it. And luckily, we have Mike Moran here, so he's going to solve our septic tank problem in Sarasota.
Whenever you talk to people with the state level focus, they say the counties can handle it, and then when you have county people up here, they say we need Tallahassee dollars. So I've talked about septic tanks. They get really boring. I've talked about septic tanks with the Moat Marine folks quite a bit, and here's my understanding. It stinks.
That's funny.
Just to keep it local, in Sarasota County, we know that about 80% of the nutrient runoff is coming from 7,000 to 8,000 old septic tanks that are not been modernized, and these are the leaky ones that drain to the water table. This is like the bad boy list. they're also in homes of asset-limited folks, right, who can't afford to have a septic tank upgrade. Now we get fundamental again. That's a burden that we're all feeling. When the septic runoff hits our water, that's our water, and we all feel that burden. Should we also carry the burden of updating those 7,000 to 8,000 septic tanks? Tough, right? As a Republican, I don't ever want to increase taxes. I'll start there. But I also know that those 7,000 to 8,000 people can't afford to modernize their own septic tanks. And perhaps a tax break is a way to incentivize them to do it. Or maybe maybe they're Tallahassee dollars for you, Commissioner. But this is the sort of nuance that I would like to see, right? How can we ensure that the folks that are paying to clean up the septic tanks are the ones who will benefit from it? How can we keep that burden and benefit as closely matched as possible?
Thank you. Next. Continue talking. Last couple of questions on the infrastructure and the fact that we're getting 900 people moving to Florida every year, and a lot of them are coming from New York. And, oh, that's a day. That's right. You're right. 900 people per day. You guys are on the ball. Thank you. 900 people per day coming to Florida, and a lot of them are coming from high-tax states like New York and Connecticut. So we need the infrastructure, but how do you deal with taxes? So the question is, what do we do about infrastructure and with these 900 people coming in every day? It was Jason? Oh, it's Donna?
I got it.
Oh, okay, whoever wants to speak.
So Sarah, you want to co?
Regarding infrastructure, this is a problem that's been going on really since I've been to Florida decades ago. How do you deal with the extraordinary growth? And the structure of the tax system seems to be that the people that are coming here are not only increasing our property values because they're then buying a house or getting a job or spending their money, but they're also paying taxes. They're buying, in the process of them buying a new house, it increases the tax revenues. So to some extent, we like the tourists. We like the people moving here. We like them coming here and spending money because I like to pay low taxes. Everybody in the room could raise their hand and say, yes, me too. I don't want to pay any taxes. Well, that's where the tax revenue comes from. So there's a certain amount of kind of give and take there that we need. We need these people to keep coming, and why not? It's an attractive place to live. We have to be smart about the particular infrastructure and smart about where we place it. There's a handful of bills that are putting new highways in, but there's a number of other avenues that have been tried in the past that are becoming more and more, are sounding more and more light rail projects in Orlando are starting. There's been one in Miami that's, I don't know if you've ever been on it, it's a little shaky, literally and figuratively, but these are becoming, as we get more dense, as we get more concentration in the cities, the locomotion, at least around the cities, it makes more sense. There's a handful of ideas, having a stepped-up bus system I've seen in Tampa. There's a couple of other ideas that increase the traffic infrastructure, or increase the mobility in the traffic infrastructure. But specific to pipes, specific to septic tanks, we just need to keep building. We need to keep building smartly. Thank you.
First, I mean no disrespect by not standing for these answers, but I'm going to have a baby in 2 weeks.
We understand.
So I love the Constitution, I love democracy, I love governance, and I'll talk poetically about it all day. But here's how politics gets done. Those of you who have been up to Tallahassee, like Ray Pilon, our former representative in the back, know this. Kevin Wright just spent the week in Tallahassee, he also knows it. Deals get done. The way we bring state dollars back to this region is by teamwork, okay? When we look at the Sarasota-Manatee area, which by the way is on the top 10 list for growth areas in the state of Florida, we have a little hole in District 72 that is the hole in our united Republican front. All of our other legislators that surround this region are all Republicans, which is the majority in the House. If one of the three of us can take back District 72, that increases our ability to work with our fellow Republicans and fight for those tax dollars to come back to the state to invest in things like infrastructure. That's how I would address it. I think we have a lot of good arguments for why we need those state dollars based on how popular our region is. That's an argument I'd love to make. I'd love to fight that fight for us. And that's how I would focus on infrastructure.
Well, like Lourdes said, there's 900 people coming in a day. The Chamber of Commerce estimates that we're going to go from probably about 21.4 million people in the state of Florida by 2030, 26 million people. So I'm hoping they all go to Orlando and Miami. However, that's not what Fiona just said, so that's too bad. Yes, we like tourism, but if you're really from Sarasota, you like them to come and then you like them to go. I also would agree that this is you need to elect someone who can be effective in teamwork and in getting monies for Sarasota for things like the disaster that's going to occur, as we all know, on Stickney Point and 41. I mean, that is going to be a nightmare. And so we're going to need to get monies for that. And we're going to need to get monies for, I guess they're trying to divert 75 traffic, the extension of Lorraine. So all of those things need to be addressed, but obviously they require money. And not all of that is then municipal, that is at the state legislature. So I have been to Tallahassee probably 15 to 17 times. I was on the advocacy arm for Junior League of Sarasota. I actually was I was the educational task force chair for the whole state of the junior leagues. I then went 8 or 9 times for Sarasota Memorial Hospital. I love Tallahassee. I know that makes me sound sick, but I love the energy of Tallahassee, and I will fight for all of you.
I have a few more questions, but I want to wrap it up because I always like to end about 1:30. So I'm going to give each one time, and I'll give you a couple minutes. I know I said a minute. Just to, anything you want to address that wasn't addressed among the questions, or just give your closing statements. And we'll start with Jason, and then work our way.
I want to keep Florida moving forward. I mean, look how far we've come, and imagine how far we can go. Right now, we have a vibrant economy, right? Our economy has grown to this point, the highest Dow that we've ever had. The economy is just exploding, and Florida is on the receiving end of a lot of that explosion, right? We've talked about how people are coming to Florida in droves. In Sarasota, we have a rich and productive arts scene. We have the best schools in the state of Florida. My wife is a teacher, I know firsthand. Thank you, Karen Rose. And we have low taxes, right? The big detractors involving our quality of life are red time, and to some extent infrastructure. So those are the things that we have to address. And those things require teamwork and leadership. Not just being a member of the team, but trying to lead the members of the team. Lead the team because all of these problems that we've been discussing at the state level are bigger than just one seat. It requires leadership to circle those wagons and to bring that issue to a head and get funding here, to get red tide research, to understand those issues and push forward. So I like to promote to you the terms of leadership that I've had as a prosecutor in Sarasota, and as a team leader on a trial team, as a military leader in the JAG Corps, and also as now a civil litigator as a head of a law firm here in Sarasota, head of the litigation side of a law firm. Those areas of leadership are what are required for this position, not just a vote. I mean, I would really love your vote, but I want to vote for the leader, the best leader that you see. And everybody on stage here is a great person and will do a good job. But I'm asking for your vote because of my experience in leadership and the way that we've discussed it today. I couldn't have put a better point on it myself. We need to have a leader in Tallahassee that can bring Sarasota back into the fold. Thank you very much. I'm Jason Miller. Please vote on August 18th.
Donald, sure.
Please join my over 200 Sarasota donors and the elected officials that have endorsed me, to include Senator and Pro Temp Lisa Carlton, her mom's right over there, Barbara Carlton, and Senator Representative Ray Pilon, Representative Jim Lombard, who was the minority House leader, Senator Nancy Dietert, county commissioners, I'm sorry, I don't know, I have a long list and I should, Nora Patterson and Paul Mercier, Clerk of the Court, Karen Rushing, who you heard from before, thank you Karen, and Property Appraiser Bill First. And my latest endorsement is Britt Reiner, who is a hospital board, and I greatly appreciate all those endorsements, to send me to Tallahassee. I have spent my entire adult life in Sarasota, committed to Sarasota, being your advocate and being a volunteer. And I would experience no greater honor than to represent you in Tallahassee. I will take each legislation and examine it through a conservative lens, rewarding free enterprise, but more importantly, protecting the American and the Florida dream. I pledge to each and every one of you that I will represent Sarasota and Sarasota County, and I will protect its values and its character. Thank you.
Thank you guys for paying attention to us today as we talk about sewage and septic and things that aren't that sexy. You know, my campaign was lucky to get some press attention this week over fundraising dollars, and I'm honored for that because it feels like, you know, my hard work is being recognized, but that's not what it's about. You know, none of us are sitting up here because we think we're the best. That's also not what it's about. It's what you think is the best for you and who you think will best represent your interests. And I'll venture it'll perhaps be different for each of you, whether you think it's one of the three of us, or maybe even a Democrat. But that's up to you guys, and that's why it's important that we're doing this. And even if we're even doing it so far away from the election, you got to listen to us. You got to hear what we think and we believe. This is the best forum to do it, where we've had time to talk through some of these more nuanced issues. Walk away from here and ponder it, or if you already know, that's the person that you want to have represent you and your interests. One thing I think is pretty clear from today, whoever represents District 72 in 2021 is going to be a Republican. And I think we'll all be in good hands no matter how it shakes out.
So I want to thank Donna Barkham, Fiona McFarland, and Jason Miller for coming to our meeting today and answering all those questions. And there were tons more, I just couldn't ask them all. So I'm sure that if you're interested in asking those questions, you can talk to them after the meeting, or maybe get their card and send them an email. But thank you for coming to our meeting. It's going to be a tough choice, I can tell you that. All right, we're going to do the book giveaway and the 50-50. So if you take out your tickets.